All right, so fuck all the bullshit. Let's get straight into the life of John Lennon. You know, the Beatle everyone thinks they fucking know.
Right.
We're going to rip those rose-colored glasses right the fuck off. We're going to get down to the nitty-gritty. You think you know Lennon?
Uh-huh.
Think again, buddy.
Yeah.
This deep dive's going to hit you with some shit you probably haven't heard before. We're talking the dirt, the drama, all the fucked up shit that they leave out of those glossy fucking biographies.
John Lennon. He was a walking contradiction, you know?
Yeah.
A peace-loving rebel.
Oh, yeah.
A musical genius.
Totally.
Total asshole. And we're going to unpack all that and more.
Okay, so, young John, let's start with him. Straight up troublemaker, dude.
Yeah.
Parents, they were telling their kids, stay the hell away from this guy.
Yeah.
But here's the kicker. Lennon had 5 strong women in his life. Mom, his aunt, they basically raised him, shaped his views on women, the world, everything.
It's true. These women, they were intelligent, independent. They instilled in him a strong sense of feminism.
Yeah.
Which, kind of surprising, considering his Hellraiser reputation.
Yeah.
You can trace these early influences back to his later activism.
Right.
His very outspoken support for women's rights.
So this little shit was a feminist.
Yeah.
Wild. And writing songs at 16.
Yeah.
Hello, Little Girl. Ironically became a hit for another band later on.
Yeah.
Talk about foreshadowing.
That early song, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Shows the seeds of his songwriting talent, you know?
Sure.
Simple, catchy melody, a classic love song.
Yeah.
But as we'll see, his songwriting, it evolved dramatically.
Right.
It got way more complex, experimental, and introspective.
Okay, fast forward. Beatles explode onto the scene. Beatlemania sweeps the world.
Right.
And Lennon's the leader, the driving force behind it all.
Initially, yeah, he had that raw energy, you know, that rebellious spirit that
Yeah.
drew people in. But the band evolved. So did the dynamics.
Right.
What's interesting about his songwriting during this period, there's this stark contrast. You have the early pop hits full of youthful energy, but then he starts experimenting with sounds, pushing boundaries.
Right.
Songs like Strawberry Fields Forever, which is a sonic trip, man.
Oh, yeah.
Tape loops, backwards recordings, Indian instruments. Unlike anything else at the time.
And it's not like they were just some underground band. The British establishment, they fucking embraced them.
Yeah.
They got MBEs.
I know.
But Lennon, being Lennon, he told them to shove it.
Mm.
Gave the medals back.
Yeah.
What a badass.
Rejecting that MBE, it says a lot about his rebellious spirit,
Yeah.
his growing disillusionment with authority.
Totally.
He never conformed, even to accolades from the very establishment he was rebelling against.
Right. And he wasn't just about the music, man. Did you know he starred in this anti-war black comedy film called How I Won the War?
Oh, yeah.
A Beatle in a fucking war movie?
Playing a character named Breed.
Oh, my God. I have.
So it's his willingness to explore different creative outlets, to express his anti-establishment views. Lennon, he was never afraid to use his platform, you know, to challenge the status quo,
Yeah.
through music, film, or even public stunts.
Speaking of pushing boundaries, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Drugs.
Yeah.
Lennon's LSD use. Legendary, man.
Yeah.
How the hell did that affect his music and his personality? Something definitely shifted after he started tripping balls.
LSD, it had a profound impact on Lennon,
Yeah.
both personally and artistically.
Yeah.
Amplified his introspective tendencies, which led to a more experimental and psychedelic phase with the Beatles.
Yeah.
It also fueled his rebellious spirit, pushed him further from social norms.
Right.
You can hear the influence of LSD in songs like Tomorrow Never Knows with its hypnotic drone and surreal lyrics.
And then, of course, there's a love story that shocked the world.
Right.
John and Yoko.
Mm-hmm.
This is where things get really interesting.
Their relationship, it was controversial from the start.
Oh, yeah.
They met at an art gallery. And the story goes, Yoko, she had this art piece, you hammer a nail into a board.
I heard about that.
Yeah.
Lennon wanted to hammer a real nail, but Yoko's like, nope, not happening.
She didn't even know who he was at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It perfectly illustrates their dynamic, you know.
Totally.
He was the impulsive rock star.
Yeah.
She was the avant-garde artist,
Yeah.
challenging his perceptions.
Right.
Their connection, undeniable.
Oh, yeah.
And their relationship, well, it began while Lennon was still married to his first wife, Cynthia.
And to add fuel to the fire, they released Two Virgins, an album with full frontal nudity on the cover. That shit practically broke the internet. before the internet even existed.
Right, that album. It was more than just a musical statement.
Right.
It was a deliberate provocation, a way to challenge societal norms and draw attention to their artistic and activist partnership. They were using their fame and notoriety to push boundaries,
Yeah.
make people think.
And they were all about peace. Right. Those bed-ins for peace.
Right.
Wild, man. Laying in bed for a week, inviting the press in to talk about love and peace. What the fuck? It was a brilliant PR move, actually. They knew how to use the media to amplify their message, give peace a chance, and Happy Xmas, War is Over, became anthems of the anti-war movement, spreading their message of peace to a global audience.
Okay, so we got the rebellious youth, Beatlemania, the LSD trips, the Yoko Ono drama.
Yeah.
But things are about to get messy. Buckle up for the lost weekend.
This period, it marks a separation from Yoko, and Lennon, he kind of goes off the rails.
Yeah.
Heavy drinking, public outbursts, just a string of wild events that became legendary rock and roll lore.
Dude was living in a haze of booze and bad decisions.
Yeah.
But he was still making music, right? I heard stories about those crazy recording sessions with Harry Nilsson, fueled by brandy and blow.
Yes. He recorded the Walls and Bridges album during this time, which reflects his emotional turmoil.
Yeah.
His inner demons. It's a raw confessional album. It shows a different side of Lennon, one that's vulnerable, struggling.
And this is when he was with May Pang, right? Yeah. She was more than just a fling, though. She helped him reconnect with his son, Julian, which is pretty touching considering his rocky relationship with fatherhood.
May Pang Shi played a significant role in his life during this period. She provided companionship, support, a sense of stability when he desperately needed it.
And here's a wild tidbit. Lennon actually produced a Mick Jagger song that stayed unreleased for over 30 years. Can you believe that? A John Lennon-produced Mick Jagger track gathering dust for decades.
It's a testament to his musical talent.
Yeah.
And his willingness to collaborate with other artists, even those considered rivals.
But eventually, Lennon finds his way back to Yoko.
Yeah.
And they have Sean. And get this, he becomes a full-time house husband. Can you imagine John Lennon changing diapers? What a trip.
That's a pivotal moment. He steps back from the limelight to focus on family.
Right.
Embracing a domestic life.
Yeah.
Which was in stark contrast to his wild rock and roll years.
Yeah.
This period of domesticity, it had a profound impact on him.
Right.
Influenced his later music and outlook on life.
Right.
It's a side of Lennon that many people don't know about.
Right.
The quiet, introspective family man who found peace and contentment in fatherhood.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Wild childhood, Beatlemania, LSD, Yoko, the lost weekend, house husband years.
Yeah.
This is just the tip of the iceberg, folks.
John Lennon's life. It was a roller coaster of extremes, full of contradictions and complexities. He was a brilliant artist, a flawed human being, and a cultural icon who continues to fascinate us decades after his death.
Stay tuned for part 2 of this deep dive. We're going to explore Lennon's political activism, his relationship with the other Beatles, and the events that led to his tragic assassination. We're just getting started, folks.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so back to this deep dive into John Lennon. Complex dude, full of contradictions, right?
Yeah.
Last time we talked about him settling into that house husband role.
Right.
But don't think that mellowed him out. His activist fire, still burning.
Oh, absolutely. Dude went from rock star to Mr. Mom, but he never stopped sticking it to the man. Political activism, it was like a constant thread throughout his whole life.
Yeah, give peace a chance.
Exactly.
That was just the tip of the iceberg, man.
Oh, yeah.
His activism, especially during the Vietnam War, went way beyond singing about peace.
Right.
He and Yoko, they were relentless, man. They used their fame to stage those bed-ins, protests, public art installations, you know.
Oh, yeah.
All to draw attention to the horrors of war, promote peace, all that.
And they pissed off a lot of people along the way.
Oh, yeah.
Those bed-ins, the Baygism stunts, the constant media attention. It wasn't all peace and love, man.
Definitely ruffled some feathers. And, it attracted the attention of the FBI.
Oh, really?
The FBI?
Yeah, they saw him as a threat.
Wow.
Because of his influence on the anti-well movement.
Nixon himself was supposedly paranoid about Lennon, right?
They say, yeah.
E-Beatle versus the president. That's some serious shit. Oh, yeah. Can you imagine the pressure? Constant scrutiny.
Oh, man.
Absolutely.
Wow.
The FBI, they had a file on him, tapped his phones. They even tried to deport him.
No way.
Yeah, Lennon was fighting that deportation order for years, man, all the way to the courts. It was stressful, uncertain times for him.
This the 70s, man. Drugs, rock and roll, political upheaval. Lennon was right in the thick of it, and his music definitely reflected those times, right? The raw emotion, the anger, that yearning for change.
You can hear it in his solo albums. John Lennon Plastic Ono Band, imagine. Sometime in New York City.
Yeah.
They're all infused with his political and personal struggles.
Speaking of struggles, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the Beatles breakup. It was like a global trauma, man.
It was, yeah.
Fans were devastated.
Yeah.
And all the rumors about feuding and bad blood, it's juicy stuff, man.
The Beatles breakup, it was more than just a creative split. It was a clash of personalities, egos, artistic visions. Lennon, especially,
Right.
he was increasingly disillusioned with the band's direction. Right.
He felt stifled creatively. And his relationship with Paul McCartney,
Yeah.
it had become strained.
So what was the deal? Was it all Paul's fault? Yoko's influence? Creative differences? Spill the tea?
It's never that simple, man.
Ah.
Multiple factors at play.
Yeah? Okay.
The loss of their manager, Brian Epstein, huge blow.
Right.
He was the glue that held them together. Then you have the artistic tensions between Lennon and McCartney, both brilliant songwriters.
Totally.
But their styles, they were divergent.
Yeah. And Yoko being in the studio didn't help, did it?
Probably not.
The other Beatles weren't exactly thrilled about her involvement.
Yoko was a disruptive force, no doubt. But her relationship with John,
Yeah.
it was deeply intertwined with his music. She inspired him, challenged him, pushed him into new creative territory. She became his muse, his collaborator, and his partner in everything.
It's interesting, though, right? How some fans blame Yoko for the breakup.
Oh, yeah.
But you could also argue that she helped Lennon find his own voice outside of the Beatles. That's a valid point. Their relationship, intense and unconventional,
Yeah.
but it's clear that they brought something unique out in each other.
Okay, so post-Beatles, Lennon's still making music, but his relationship with the other guys, complicated. He even wrote that song, How Do You Sleep? A straight-up diss track aimed at McCartney.
Oh, that song. Brutal, man. Full of anger, resentment. It's a window into the raw emotions, you know,
Yeah.
that were simmering beneath the surface.
Wow.
Their rivalry, legendary, fueled by their competitive spirits, clashing egos.
But it wasn't always toxic, right? They had moments of reconciliation, even jamming together in the 70s. Can you imagine being a fly on the wall during those sessions?
Must have been wild. But the tension, it was always there, lurking beneath the surface. They were like brothers,
Yeah.
bound by that shared history, but constantly battling for dominance.
What about George and Ringo? Where did they fit into all this drama?
Lennon remained on good terms with Ringo throughout the years.
Oh.
They even collaborated on some post-Beatles projects. But his relationship with George, more volatile.
Yeah.
They had a falling out over a business dispute. And Lennon was hurt by George's autobiography. He felt it downplayed his role in their partnership.
Man, talk about drama. It's like a soap opera with guitars and LSD.
Lennon was a passionate guy. He didn't hold back his feelings, whether it was love, anger, resentment. He expressed it all, sometimes to his detriment.
All right, let's bring it back to the music. After that house husband phase, Lennon comes back with Double Fantasy, a deeply personal album. It reveals a new maturity, vulnerability in his music.
Double Fantasy is a fascinating album.
Yeah.
It's a reflection of his personal growth,
Right.
his love for Yoko and Sean, his
Yeah.
hopes for the future.
Right.
It's a far cry from the raw anger of his earlier solo work. You can hear a sense of peace, contentment in his voice.
And then, just when he's hitting his stride, tragedy strikes, the assassination. Still hard to believe it happened.
Senseless act of violence. It shook the world. It robbed us of a unique voice, a powerful artist who is still evolving, pushing boundaries. It's a loss that music fans still feel today.
It's hard to fathom the impact of that event. Lennon was more than just a musician. He was a cultural icon, a symbol of peace and rebellion. His legacy continues to inspire us, to provoke us.
His legacy, complex and enduring, brilliant songwriter, flawed human being, a catalyst for change.
Right.
He inspired millions with his music, his activism,
Yeah.
and his tragic death left a void that's never really been filled.
Okay, so we've talked about his troubled youth, Beatlemania, the drugs, Yoko, the feuds, the comeback, and the assassination. We've gone from Love Me Do to Imagine to Starting Over. It's It's been a wild ride.
John Lennon's life was a roller coaster, man. He experienced the highest highs, the lowest lows.
Yeah.
He was loved and hated, revered and reviled. But one thing's for sure, he left an indelible mark on the world.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, there's another side of Lennon we need to explore. His artistic and literary side. So stick around for part 3, where we'll uncover even more about the enigmatic John Lennon. Okay, so we talked about Lennon the musician, the activist, the rebel. But there's another side to this guy that often gets overlooked.
Right.
His artistic and literary side.
Yeah.
Turns out, this guy wasn't just a musical genius. He was like a creative whirlwind, man, expressing himself in all sorts of ways.
Yeah, Lennon had this incredible knack for wordplay and a dark sense of humor that really shines through in his writing and his visual art. Like, he just couldn't contain his creativity to music. It spilled out in all these other forms.
So, like, what are we talking about here? Poetry, novels. Did he write a fucking cookbook?
He wrote 2 books, actually.
He did.
And they're both pretty wild. The first one, in his own right, it's a collection of short stories, poems, drawings, completely absurd and hilarious. It's like reading a fever dream, full of puns, made-up words, surreal imagery. Imagine Lewis Carroll on acid.
Seriously. Give me an example. What kind of crazy shit did he write about?
One of the stories is called Sad Michael. It's about this guy who's so sad he turns into a shoe.
Turns into a shoe.
Yeah. And there's this poem, The Fat Budgie, pure nonsense, but somehow brilliant.
A guy turning into a shoe. That's fucked up, man. But I kind of get it. Sometimes I feel like turning into a shoe when I'm hungover.
Lennon's writing is like that. It's absurd, nonsensical, but it also taps into those, universal feelings.
Yeah.
Alienation, loneliness, the absurdity of life, all that.
So it's not just like silly jokes and wordplay. There's some depth to it.
Absolutely. He's playing with language, poking fun at authority, exposing the hypocrisy of society. He's also exploring his own inner world, his fears, his vulnerabilities.
And his drawings, what are those like?
His drawings, just as bizarre as his writing. Symbol line sketches with this childlike quality, but often with a dark or subversive edge. He wasn't afraid to be provocative, even in his art.
Well, yeah, this is the guy who put full frontal nudity on an album cover.
Yeah.
Subtlety and wasn't exactly his strong suit.
And speaking of provocation, he wrote this skit for a play called Oh, Calcutta. That was super explicit. It was all about group masturbation.
Well, hold up. Group what? This guy was pushing boundaries in every art form imaginable. He just couldn't help himself, could he?
Lennon was a true artist, always pushing the envelope, challenging conventions, making people think. His art was an extension of his, rebellious spirit, his need to question everything, expose the hypocrisy of the world.
So we got the musician, the activist, the writer, the artist. Is there anything this guy couldn't do? It's almost intimidating.
Lennon, he was undeniably gifted.
Yeah.
He had this raw talent that poured out of him in all these different forms. But he was also deeply flawed, as we've discussed.
Good.
His anger, his ego, his tendency for self-sabotage, it's all part of the package.
Yeah, we've covered that.
Yeah.
The dude was a walking contradiction.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that's what made him so compelling, right? He was human, relatable, despite his fame and genius.
That's what resonates with people even today. We see the brilliance, the flaws, the struggles,
Yeah.
and we recognize a bit of ourselves in him. He was a mirror reflecting the complexities of the human experience.
Okay, so after this deep dive, what's the final verdict? Saint or sinner? Genius or jerk? Was he a peace-loving hippie or just a self-absorbed asshole?
It's not about labels.
Okay.
John Lennon, he was a force of nature.
Yeah.
He changed the world with his music, challenged us with his activism, left behind a legacy that continues to inspire and provoke.
Right.
He was a flawed human being, capable of great love and great anger, profound art, and petty squabbles. And that's what makes him so fascinating.
Damn right. He was one of a kind. That's why, even decades after his death, we're still talking about him, dissecting his life, listening to his music. He left an indelible mark on the world. And his story, like his music, it'll continue to resonate for generations to come.
Well said. John Lennon, he was a lightning rod. He attracted attention, sparked debate, and left us with more questions than answers.
All right, folks, that's a wrap on this deep dive into the life and legacy of John Lennon. We've covered a lot of ground, from his rebellious youth to his tragic death. But there's always more to uncover, So keep digging, keep listening, and keep questioning everything, because that's what John Wood wanted. Peace out.